This is the breed standard. We don't have any candidate judges here, do we? Yeah. Oh, we do. Good. Oh, that's right. Yeah. No. For candidate judges, this is one of the required 7 topics for seminars. So make sure that you have this down on your record for the seminars that you've attended. If you're a judge, of course, you have to have continuous education. So that's also part of it. But this is what we're going to be focusing on here. We're going to look at, there are actually 15 sections of the breed standard, and we're going to look at all of them briefly. I'm going to highlight some parts, some little words and phrases that I think are important. Oh, and we do have a live subject here.
Did not show me this weekend, so.
What's his name? Price.
You judged him before, so.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to occasionally refer to the actual body of the dog here with Price, but seriously, it's not even a big group. So if you want to just get up and touch the dog for something that I'm talking about, that's fine. There's no problem. He's very compliant, right?
He is. You can handle his dog.
Okay. I'm also going to be speaking, now this is not just for judges, so if you're not a judge and you have no wish to be a judge, it's not a problem. If you're a breeder, you're going to want to evaluate your puppies. If you're an exhibitor, you want to know what you're looking at. If you're just sitting in the audience watching the dog show, you want to know what you're seeing. Why is the judge making these choices? So I will discuss a little bit about how a judge can discern how closely each entry conforms to the breed standard, because that's what we're tasked with. We are tasked with finding out how each entry conforms to the breed standard. There'll be a few comparisons to the AKC and UK breed standards, a little bit of history, and since I'm a teacher, lots of pre-tests. I like pre-tests. I think pre-tests are better than post-tests, because if you answer a question on a post-test incorrectly, then you figure like, oh my God, I failed this because I really didn't learn anything. But this kind of gives you an idea of where you stand before I show you what I have to offer here. So there'll be a bunch of pre-tests. Be ready for them. That's what the cards are used for. And when you answer with your cards, you just hold them up so I can see them. Please try to resist peeking at other people's answers. It's like, he put up B, okay, it's B. We don't really want that. We want your opinion. I'd like to assess where everybody here stands.
Cheat from the right people.
And then, right, yeah. There are people you would cheat from. Yeah.
Just don't get caught.
Whose cards are you looking at?
So, without further ado, let's go to pretest number 1. We haven't talked about, and again, each one of these pretests is going to be geared to what we will be talking about. Can everybody read that okay?
No, I think you should read it.
I can read it out. I hate, though, when people do PowerPoint presentations and read everything to you. I try to resist that, but I will. What part of the dog's body is described in more sections of the breed standard than any other? Remember, we said there were 15 sections in the breed standard. Okay? It's A, the body, B, the legs, C, the coat colors, D, the head, E, the shoulders. And if you not only know which one it is, but how many sections refer to that part of the body, that's like bonus credit for yourself. We're not scoring anybody, but you can brag about it. So hold up your cards when you think you know the answer.
No, I didn't. It was the same answer. I waffled.
God, I guess
I did too.
Now you know why I'm not the judge.
Okay, I see mostly A's and D's. In fact, I think I see all A's and D's. And some of those are right. It's actually the head. If you want
I waffled correctly. Change your answer. I was waffling back and forth on D.
Yeah, it's if you look at, unless you want to extend the meaning of the body to include the head, well then fine, then that would be the right answer. But when we talk about the body, usually we're referring to this part of the body here. That would be, and that is referred to. But does anybody know how many sections of the 15 refer to the head? We got 5.
For the head.
Do I hear 6? It's actually 6. Yeah, there are 6 sections. If you include the head, the eyes, the ears, the different, the nose and muzzle, there are 6 sections, and we'll be talking about those. Second question on pretest number 1: the first section that you find when you read the breed standard, our breed standard, what is it? Is it called general? Is it called temperament, movement, the head, or eyes? Let's see those cards. You peeked. Did you peek? I'm just kidding. Yeah. I see a lot of A's and a couple of B's, and actually it is called general. But if you said B, don't feel bad about it, because it talks about the temperament in the section on general. So, in a sense, that is a correct answer. We're not grading this, so don't worry about it. So let's look into some of these things here. This is what it says in that first section, general. I guess I still have to read this to everybody, huh? Sorry about that. An active, graceful, well-balanced dog, very gay and free in action, fearless and sporting in character, yet at the same time gentle and affectionate. So what I'm going to do with each one of these sections is to highlight certain portions and discuss my feelings on them. You have to remember that there's an awful lot of interpretation that goes along with the breed standard. Words are there to be applied and interpreted, and every judge is going to have a slightly different interpretation. So, my opinion is not necessarily any better than somebody else's. But let me highlight the sections that I consider to be important and what they mean. That phrase, well-balanced, right there, is a real loaded phrase. Well-balanced can mean a lot of different things. When I first approach a dog, when I turn around, the dog is on the table, and I take a look at the dog, there's one interpretation of balance that I use at that point. And that is how well the dog's proportions fit what the breed standard should be. Now, it doesn't really say anything in our breed standard about how the proportions should be. But most people interpret it to mean that if you look at the general shape of the body, and I look at that little rectangle there, which starts at the ground, goes up to the top line, and goes up on the left side from the foreleg. On the right side, it goes up from the rear pastern. I look at that rectangle. It's very easy to see when you turn around and look at a dog. And I like to see it not quite square, but just a little bit longer than high. If you were judging from the AKC standard, the AKC standard is a lot more specific, but I don't think it's as easy to apply. The AKC standard uses a slightly different rectangle. They use a rectangle that goes from the ground up to the top line, but goes from the forechest here, the point of shoulder, right? Point of shoulder is a bony prominence that you can feel right here, to the point of buttocks, which is right back here, the rear of the pelvis. I find those points a little harder to see, especially in a dog that has a lot of coat, than what I use. But their breed standard says that it should approach squareness, but be slightly longer between those 2 points than it is high. Okay? By the way, if you have any questions, please, I like to have a little interchange of ideas. Don't ever feel like you have a stupid question. I taught mathematics to teenagers for 44 years. There is not a stupid question that I have not heard before. So if you want to, if you think it's stupid,
Like a challenge.
Yeah, it is. The only stupid question is the one you don't ask. So if you have a question, or if you have a comment, because we have a lot of experienced, smart people here. So if you have a comment that you'd like to contribute, it's more than welcome. So anyway, that's the first impression of balance that I get. But balance can mean a lot of other things. When I look at a dog moving in profile, I don't know, I hope you can see there are these little green arrows here and here. And that's pointing to how far the front paw is extended and how far the rear paw is extended, which we usually refer to that as reach and drive. And I like to see a dog that not only has good reach, not only has good drive, but they're balanced. I look at the lines of their legs, and I like to see roughly the same angle along that front leg as I see in the rear leg. And that's another measure of balance. You can have a dog that really doesn't have a lot of reach and drive, but if it's balanced, it's going to move better than a dog that has a wonderful front end and a terrible rear end, or vice versa. So balance is one of the things that's described in the general section, and I think that's a very important factor. Fearless, gentle, and affectionate. How do I determine if a dog is fearless, gentle, and affectionate? I have a little bit of a video snippet that I want to show you. It's not very long. I had to slow down some of it, but take a look at this. This is, I had my granddaughter helping me here. And right here, when I approach the dog, I put my hand out. Now you'll notice she's not afraid of approaching me. She actually licks my hand. Of course, it's my dog, so that helps. And she allows me very gracefully, very graciously to put my hands on her face, on her head. Let's see how this little guy does. I don't really know him. Hey. All right.
You don't have the cheese.
No cheese, but he's fearless. He's gentle, and he's very affectionate. And that's a very simple way to determine. I mean, there are other ways, and there are other times while you're examining a dog that you're going to be looking at their temperament, but that's my first impression of the temperament of the dog. Active, graceful, very gay and free in action. The way we judge that is pretty obvious, right? How do we judge that?
Movement.
Yeah, you watch the move. You know, we tell them to do a triangle, do a down and back, or around the ring, whatever we decide that we would like to see. If you watch here, oops, this should be a video. There we go. This was from this year's Westminster. This was our best of breed. And when I watch him move, I'm looking to see if he is graceful in the sense that the movement seems to be flowing freely and almost effortless. And if you take a look, I slowed this down so that you could look at it. Watch as this dog goes around. Oh, by the way, bonus if you spot me in this video, because I'm in it, right behind the judge there. As this dog goes around the ring, just take a look at how nice and smooth that action is. It doesn't look like he's working very hard. And that's one of the ways that we can determine if they fit that part.
I like to use the word fluid
Mm-hmm.
because it's just like a floating kind of fluid, effortless movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've even put that into some of my critiques. So
You've probably seen it in some of mine.
I probably, yeah. Oh, yeah, I do copy sometimes. So, yeah.
Says the man who sipped our cheek.
All right, so that was we can't spend too much time on any one section because otherwise we'll be here all night, and I know some people have things to do. Pretest number 2. According to our breed standard, the skull should be domed, slightly rounded, flat, concave, or none of those. Hold up your cards. I am seeing all B's and C's, basically. Actually, one of those is right, and the other one is very, very close to being right. The right one is slightly rounded.
It's supposed to look flat once the ears are on.
Well, that's,
Parents of
this is a pretest. We'll be talking about that. Question? Oh, no question 2 there. Okay, so this is what it says about the head. Skull is slightly rounded, without a dome or peak. It should appear flat, not be flat, but appear flat because of the high placement of the ears. Now this guy, if you look at the top of his head, it looks like you could eat dinner off of there. It's a nice flat head. But actually, if you look at where the skull is, I tried to approximate where his skull is with that yellow circle. That is definitely rounded. And you can feel, you put your hands on it, obviously, you don't put your hands on the top of a dog's head and go boom, it's flat. It's rounded. So I can come over here and I feel it's rounded, but if the ears are placed high enough, it's going to have that flat appearance. That, by the way, is enhanced when the dog is more alert, which is why we make silly noises when we want our dogs to look their best. Oh yes, right, green beans, yeah. Now, just so you know, the AKC standard is pretty much the same as ours, but the UK standard does say that the skull is almost flat between the ears. I think our breed standard in this case is more descriptive and a little bit more accurate in terms of what we're looking for. On to pretest number 3. The original 1928 breed standard, which was based on a dog named Anne's Son. Which of these, if any, is true? It was not written in English. It was a numerical point system. It was criticized as being too wordy. It did not include a description of the coat. Or maybe none of those. We'll see your answers. We have a diversity of opinion here. I think we have every possible answer. That's good. So that means at least some of you are correct. It's B. It was actually a numerical point system. It was not wordy at all. The wording was very brief. And there were just, so many points for this and for that and so on. Question 2. Out of the 100 points in that system, anybody know about how many were devoted to the head and its parts, like the ears and eyes and nose and so on? Is it 10, 25, 50, or more?
I drew up 2. I didn't give me 50.
One of those is a correct answer.
None of them?
One of them is. Again, we have a nice diversity. This is great. I love to see this because that means I can tell some people some things they might not know before they came here. But I do see an awful lot of people saying B and an awful lot of people saying C. I don't see too many D's, but believe it or not, it was 55 points. If you added up the skull and the nose and the ears and the eyes and so on, 55 points devoted to the head. I mean, it's no wonder people talk about Cavaliers as a head breed, right? It's a very important component of judging a dog. And we don't ascribe points anymore to our breed standard, but, this is what we came from. This is where it all started, was in England. And by the way, I'm glad nobody put A for number 1 because it was done in England, so I would hope it would be written in English. So let's take a look at some of these things. This is what it says about eyes. Large, round, set well apart, color warm. I don't have to read the whole thing, I hope. But I'm going to highlight certain portions of it that we can talk about here. Large, round, set well apart, color a warm, very dark brown, giving a lustrous, limpid look. This is the same dog, actually. I think in this pose, you can see how nicely set apart those two eyes are. And she's a little bit more alert. In fact, if you want to go back to talking about the ear set, you'll notice that the head looks more domed when she was relaxed than when she was alert here. But in the relaxed photo, and in both photos I think you can see large, brown, dark. I think in this picture you can see more of a lustrous, limpid look, because she's very relaxed and she's just kind of like, here I am, I'm beautiful. So I think that's a pretty good illustration there. Slight cushioning under the eyes. These are two dogs that I bred. Can you guess which one we kept and which one we placed? All right, that's not a big contest, is it? All right. Obviously, we kept her. This one, it's a puppy picture because we didn't have her any longer than when she was puppy. Anybody know why we like this one a lot better than that one?
A lot more feel in the muzzle and under the eyes.
There are a bunch of things, but yeah, on the muzzle, there's no cushioning. You can see what we mean by cushioning under the eyes. If you look at her, right in here on the side of the muzzle, can we show on this guy here? The cushioning is going to be right in here. All right? A lot of people think of that as enhancing the muzzle, which it does, but it enhances the look of the eyes too. That girl over there has very little cushioning, and it doesn't give her the same expression. Right?
The first one looks more eager.
Well, yeah, she was looking at me. Well, they were both looking at me. Okay, pretest number 4. In our breed standard, which word is used to describe the stop? We all know what the stop is, right? In case we have any novices here. This is the stop right here. Okay. Gentle, shallow, moderate, or deep? Most of you said C. I see a B in there. Okay. Yes. If you said C, the AKC standard does say moderate, but our breed standard says shallow. Now, I know a lot of people right now are saying, what? Shallow? That's not a... We'll talk about that in just a minute. But first, we got to do question 2. What does our breed standard say about the length of the muzzle from the stop to the tip of the nose? I know everybody knows the number 1.5 inches, so that's no news to anyone. But is it no more than 1.5 inches? About? Exactly? Or at least 1.5 inches? I see a lot of B's, a couple of A's, a D. Okay. It is D. Again, if you said about, well, the AKC standard says about, the UK standard says about, our breed standard says at least.
I don't see you out there with a ruler.
I know, we don't measure. We also, yeah, most of it, I mean, one judge I spoke to one time said that he could do his entire table examination blindfolded and he wouldn't be hampered at all. I don't think I'd go that far. But, you know, I mean, you can do this and tell just with your finger how far down it goes. Or you could just sort of, you know, eyeball it and see if it looks in proportion to the dog's head. Pam?
Someone used the thumb.
The thumb.
Yes,
I never used my thumb. Oh, so like the last knuckle of the thumb, huh? That's a good idea. I like that.
Not if you've got nails. Not if you've got nails.
Oh, well, that's the problem. You could poke the dog's eye out, and that's nice. So let's take a look at this thing about the stop and the muzzle. I put the nose and the muzzle together, and this is what our breed standard says about the nose and about the muzzle. And again, I'd like to highlight a few sections of them so that you can take a look at what I consider to be important. All right, first of all, what is this about a shallow stop? A lot of people think of a shallow stop as something that kind of like goes down on a very gentle slope. I look at this. This was a girl I had years ago, and I thought she had a very nice stop. I really liked her head. And in fact, I think the dogs I'm showing now are about 6 generations down from her. So, she is one of the ancestors of the dogs that I value right now. So why do I consider this shallow? I think you have to talk about a comparison. If I compare that stop to this stop on an English Toy Spaniel, obviously that's a much shallower stop than the English Toy has. And this is not just like something that I go along with and nobody else does. That book right there by Bruce Field, anybody here have that book? Fabulous book. It's my go-to. I read chapter 2 of that book every single time I have a judging assignment, like the night before, because it's an interpretation of the UK breed standard, but it applies to our breed standard an awful lot. And look what Bruce Field said. The stop should be shallow. Some persons find this difficult to understand. It does not mean as shallow as with some breeds, for example, Collie, but shallow when compared with the King Charles Spaniel, which is, of course, what Brits call the English Toy Spaniel. That's our term for him. So, by comparison, I find that yes, Katie, is it? Yes.
Really do.
It takes me a long time to learn the names of my students, so,
I get confused when people say shallow, because to me that means there's no depth to it at all.
Again, a lot of people think that that's what it means. But, if it's good enough for Bruce Field, it's good enough for me to just think of it as shallow by comparison. And I think if you go back to 1928 when this was written and we were just recreating the breed, that was an important point to distinguish it from what they called King Charles Spaniels.
If you look at Anne's son.
I'm sorry?
If you look at Anne's son.
Yeah, Anne's son actually has a more shallow stop than what we see today.
Yeah.
And probably if, I'm not going to be around in 50 years, but, if you came back, you'd probably see even different types of heads.
Look at Ann's son.
Yeah.
This is a picture of what they
Used.
Right.
to draw the breed standard up in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So he has a pretty shallow stop
Yeah.
as well.
Right. But again, preferences change, and what we see this type of a stop a lot more often. Yes, you got a good stop, buddy. Being very good, by the way. As far as the nose is concerned, nostrils should be well developed and the pigment uniformly black. Most of us find it very easy to spot a nice, deeply pigmented black nose, but we don't always think to check the nostrils. So I tried to get a little bit of a close-up there so that you can see the nostrils are well developed. That's important to allow the dog to breathe properly.
I did look at his nostrils.
You never look to see?
No.
That's one of the things we look at. He's got nice nostrils, very well developed.
He's like, thank you, I think. Can you imagine someone saying that about your child?
Yeah. You really smell, don't you? Good boy. So that, to me, when I look at the nose, those two things are what I look for. I look for the pigment, and I look for those nostrils to be, not overly flared, but certainly well developed. The muzzle, well tapered. Now, there's that girl again that I told you about. When I see well tapered, I don't think long and snipey, and long and snipey would not be acceptable at all. But when I see well tapered, I think of those two lines. There's a line along the top of her muzzle, there's the line along the bottom of her muzzle. And if you look, those two are coming together. And you look over here, look in profile, and again, you see that taper. And it only lasts for 1.5 inches, so you got to look fast. But there it is. Okay? So that's what well tapered means to my mind. As far as the teeth are concerned, there's a whole thing there. But the part I like to really focus on is preferably meeting in a scissors bite, although a level bite is permitted. And here you see some divergence between our breed standard, the AKC breed standard, and the UK breed standard. They're all a little bit different. In the UK standard, it pretty much demands a perfect regular scissor bite. All right, now scissor bite, I'm sure everybody here is familiar with it. You have the incisors with the top incisors fitting just outside the bottom incisors. All right. The AKC standard also talks about a regular and complete scissors bite, but it says it's preferred. Our breed standard, I think, is probably the most generous and the most specific, because we say that a level bite is permitted. The level bite, of course, is down here where the upper and lower meet exactly. There's kind of a schematic next to each one of those drawings so you can see what it looks like. And that's permitted, and even allows for a slightly undershot mouth, usually referred to as a reverse scissor bite, if everything is still going to fit and it's not going to detract from the appearance of the dog. And if we look at the whole dog, let's face it, when we're judging, we're looking at the whole dog. And if I've got a dog that's spectacular in every way and maybe has a slightly undershot reverse scissor, I would have no problem giving that dog more than just a class win. So, yeah.
Can I say something?
Yes, sir.
So, one of the girls that has been here, but she's gone home tonight, she's a vet. One of the things she's seen, and I know a friend of mine who is an all breeds judge has also seen, where the canines, actually the bottom canines go inside and up into the roof of the mouth.
Hold these narrow.
Yeah, and that's something a lot of people don't necessarily look for. It's not particularly common, but it can. It's common.
Yeah, I mean, what do we do?
More common.
It's common, but first of all, you can intervene as puppies, so you don't
Oh,
have
yeah,
to grow out of it.
But then again, what do we do when we show the bite to the judge? Yeah, you don't even see the canines, really. And if
Depends, because some judges prefer to look at the side, but I mean,
Yeah.
because I know there was a dog, and the judge actually put it back on the table to show it to the exhibitor what she was talking about, because it can open up, like,
Well, it's just painful because if the canine is making contact with the upper palate, that's a traumatic occlusion is what we would call it.
Yep.
but
So
yeah,
there's lots of bites that are correct and incorrect, but when it's a traumatic occlusion is when you intervene.
Right.
and it's not necessarily a show thing, but just something to keep an eye on when you're looking at your evaluating puppies.
You know, this is very good that we're talking about this, because it's obvious that there are an awful lot of factors that come into evaluating a dog other than what's in the breed standard. It's just that the breed standard is what we are going by. I mean, all you have to do is sit and watch Westminster for an hour or so on television, and somebody is going to comment on the fact that, well, these judges can judge one breed against the other because they're not judging them against each other, they're judging each dog against its own breed standard. So this is what we are, again, tasked with, but do other factors come into play? Of course other factors come
I
into
just
play.
meant that more as looking at puppies and things like that. It's something to keep an eye on.
Did you notice Leslie today when she was checking bites? She was checking this way.
Yeah. That's what Jenny was doing. That's when she found that.
Yeah.
And the woman had no idea that a dog. She just never looked at it.
Ears.
Must have ears.
When the dog is alert, the ears fan slightly forward to frame the face. They also, by the way, when the dog is alert, give that flat appearance of the skull. All right. What do you think of these two dogs?
It's the same dog.
It is the same dog, yes. Anybody want to guess which one is a picture of when he was younger and which one is when he was older?
He's younger in the first one.
Yeah, but he's younger in the one on the right.
Oh, really?
He was 2 years old here. Here he was, I think, almost 4.
It's more like a puppy.
But here's the thing. Well, first of all, I mean, there's a difference in grooming because he was at a dog show. We had a double AKC dog show, 2 shows in one day. he was exhausted. And, the Cavalier entry was not big, so it was like running around like crazy. He won the breed a couple of times, so, he was a busy boy. And he was exhausted. This was at the end of the show over here. Here, he was home in his living room. We were calling his name, waving treats in front of his face so we could get a good picture. Very big difference when they're alert as opposed to when they're relaxed. And he was like super relaxed, ready to go to sleep at this point. But you'll notice, don't look at, we already talked about the skull, but let's look at the way they frame the face. You'll notice that makes a nice picture the way those ears frame the face as opposed to over here where they're just sort of hanging on the side. And that's, again, if you're not a judge, you should realize that's why a judge will go up to a dog, make all kinds of like, yeah, he doesn't react.
He's used
Very
to doing
calm.
stupid things to him.
I personally prefer, once I get the dog to accept who I am, I prefer to just do this so I don't have to worry. I want to see if those ears really do frame the face, and I want to look at the picture that I get when that happens. Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me,
Oh, it's okay.
are you sure that that's the same dog?
Yes. Oh, I am positive.
It's in the side, but
No, that's him. It doesn't look like him, I know. She knows the dog, so. It's our dog. I tried to use as many of my own dogs for pictures as I could so that I didn't have anybody saying, hey, wait, you don't have permission to use that photo. In most cases, they're mine, yeah. So,
I just have never seen him
look
that
that
quiet.
sad. Looked like he was like he needed to go into foster or something.
but he was exhausted. He worked very hard. He was in and out of the ring a bunch of times. And then in between, he was being groomed, So, anyway, but that was... Okay, we're on to pretest number 5. Okay. Which, if any, of the following is found in the breed standard, the section of the breed standard that deals with shoulders? Does it say well laid, and these are in quotes, so this would be an exact quote. Well laid back, well angulated, elegant look, strongly muscled, or maybe none of those. We all agree that it's A, right?
We're all wrong.
Yeah, it's none of those. And you're not going to believe it. We all talk about well laid back shoulders, and it is something that we like to see, but it doesn't say that. When it talks about the shoulders, look at that. It says sloping back gently with moderate angulation. Now again, what do we mean by moderate angulation? We're going to have to take a look at that. And I want to take a look at the neck and shoulders together here. Oops.
Charlie, I think what's interesting is in the beginning you talked about how the standard, you have your own interpretation of the standard. And that is a classic example of everyone's own interpretation of the standard.
Absolutely.
Because we're interpreting it to be, when you take all of that, the synopsis of that all is that it's well laid back. So it's kind of funny how that's our perception of things and how
substitute it in our
that is a
head.
real life example of putting your own perception on it.
Thank you. Yes, very perceptive. You should be a judge.
Is that a giraffe?
So let's take a look first at the neck. Okay, fairly long. This dog I don't know, but I thought that was a pretty good, fairly long neck. If you have I'm sorry, I didn't hear what.
I asked her, what do you think? Because Barb's a stickler for length of neck. She
said it's adequate.
It's what?
Adequate.
Oh, adequate. Okay. Well, if you want to,
You know why, guys.
if you're not experienced and you want to know, how can I tell if that's enough neck? One of the little guidelines that's very handy, and I've occasionally kind of leaned on it myself, is to look at a couple of lines. When the dog is standing and alert, what?
I knew math would enter into it.
Oh, there's going to be more math, believe me. We're going to get into angles in a minute. Yeah. When the dog is standing and alert, like when they're lined up in the beginning or when the judge is making a decision. Can you line him up? No, just on the table. The line that is the extension of the top line should be, actually the head, I should say, should be completely above that line. And the head should be completely forward of the line that's the extension of the foreleg. Right? A well-constructed dog with a good neck is going to have his head in that little quadrant in the upper left. And you can see, forget about the ear feathering, the head itself is completely in that quadrant. So that's a little bit of a help. And by the way, this is something I went to a seminar years ago given by, I can't even remember who it was somebody who was really, I think you might have been there. Who was it that gave that? Do you remember? Somebody who's really well known for structure and movement. I can't remember.
Was it, it wasn't that breeding seminar that we went to? I know we've been...
It wasn't a club seminar.
Oh, it was Pat Hastings.
Might have been Pat Hastings, I don't remember. Yeah. But, she was talking, it was not a Cavalier seminar. It was for all breeds.
And she did one because there were so many of them.
There were a lot of, we kind of dominated. But she was talking for every breed. Those two lines are very good guidelines to look at if we want to assess the length of the neck.
I will say, if you've ever seen a Irish Wolfhound with a short neck, it's hilarious.
Really?
Because it's a sight hound, and of course they're supposed to have a long neck, so when they don't, it's like, what the hell is that?
Well enough muscled to form a slight arch at the crest. I couldn't find a good muscle diagram for Cavaliers, so I'm sorry we're using a Bernese Mountain Dog here. But
So missing quite a few muscles, Charlie.
yeah, well,
They both come in tricolors. Major muscles.
this is like, when you're teaching 7th graders about algebra, you don't go into quadratics or anything like that, Yeah, we try to simplify it. No, I like this one because I'm talking about the neck. And you probably know much better than I do, this muscle here is a very important one. But you see there are two muscles that are attached right there at the top of the neck. When it talks about well enough muscle to form a slight arch at the crest, sometimes you can see the arch. Sometimes you feel the arch. In fact, almost always, if it's a well-constructed dog. You're right here, and you're welcome to come on up and put your hand on here.
He won't mind.
Right here, I can feel those muscles. To me, and I've got my own little pet things that I take a look at, that muscle is extremely important because it lifts, you can see it's attached from the neck all the way down to the point of shoulder, which is the bottom of the shoulder blade. So actually that muscle plays a huge part in lifting the upper leg when the dog is moving, and it's going to help that forward movement. It's going to help have good reach. So that's what I look for as far as an arch is concerned. Now, what do we mean by sloping back gently with moderate angulation? All right, there's the shoulder blade, and obviously, we don't have an x-ray machine like this, so we can't see that when we're in the ring with our dogs, but we can feel it. If I can come around the other side. I think everybody's got their own way of doing it when they judge or evaluate their own dogs. What I like to do is I like to sneak up from behind until I feel the shoulder blade. Now, he's a muscled boy, so sometimes you have to put the head, can you just bring his head down a little bit? You have to put the head down, and now I got the shoulder blade, and I can feel the top of the shoulder blade right here. When I go down to here, which is the point of shoulder, which is the bottom of the shoulder blade, I can look at the angle between here, and that tells me what the shoulder layback is like. I can't even see it from here because I would usually do it on this side. But, again, we got lines, I'm sorry. There's an angle there. And that angle is the angle that represents the shoulder layback. The classic conception of shoulder layback is that a really well-constructed dog should have a 45-degree angle between the shoulder blade and the horizontal line. A lot of times you don't see that. In fact, who's the one that did dog steps?
That's,
Sorry.
That's such a great, that
Oh,
is such a
excellent.
good, look it up.
Yeah.
'Cause everybody should have that.
Yeah, dog steps was there's a video and there's a book.
They put them on a treadmill with an X-ray,
Yes.
which you could never do now.
Yeah, it was
It's wild.
done what, about 30,
1,000 years ago.
40 years ago?
When they invented X-ray.
It was pretty amazing.
Was it done before I was born? I don't think so. But anyway, she was Rachel something. What's her name? I forgot. You getting it?
Rachel Page Elliott.
Rachel Page Elliott, yes. I believe she was the first one to demonstrate that an awful lot of well-constructed dogs don't have a 45-degree layback of the shoulder. A lot of times that angle is going to be more like 60 degrees, and I've put up winners that have something along the lines of a 60-degree shoulder layback. It's not bad. Looking at him, it looks like close to 45, which is quite good, but not quite down that much. Yeah, so, yeah, but that's good. That's a good shoulder layback. So that's, to me, what moderate angulation is talking about. It doesn't have to be an extreme layback of shoulder, but it has to be something that's going to be efficient. Some people wonder, why is shoulder layback so important? I don't want to get into a physics lesson here because we had enough math already. But if the muscles are lifting from the bottom of the shoulder blade, if they're lifting that leg from here, if there's a good angle here, it'll pivot and it'll enable him to lift that leg and reach out nicely. If the shoulder is more upright, that muscle is now fighting against the shoulder blade, and it's not going to swivel the way it would otherwise. So layback, to at least some degree, is absolutely essential if you want to have decent front movement. Pretest number 6. I think there's only 7 pretests. We're getting along. Number 6. Let's see if we can all get this right here. But if you don't, it's good. Anyway, Cavalier body is described in our breed standard as cobby, moderate, short-coupled, muscular, or none of those.
Shall I do one for that and one for the UK? Because the Australia uses the UK one.
I'm going to talk about the UK one so you can have your alternate answer. Some people think none of them. We see a lot of B's and C's. And actually, our breed standard says short-coupled. We'll talk about that in a moment. But you got to do question 2 first, which is an accurate statement from our breed standard about a Cavalier's legs. The forelegs should have moderate bone. The rear pasterns should be strong. Loose elbows are considered a fault. Hind legs should be parallel from hock to heel, or maybe all of those. And I'm talking about explicitly stated in our breed standard. And we have a lot of people who are afraid to hold up their cards. Don't be afraid. The worst you can be is wrong. And unless somebody turns around and peeks, they're not going to know. I see almost everybody has E. Whoops. There we go. And that is the correct answer. All of those are in the breed standard. So again, now let's take a little bit of a closer look at certain portions of the sections on the body and the legs. This is what they say, and I want to highlight again certain portions. Short coupled. What does short coupled mean? The coupling is the loin. We should all know this, but some people may be kind of new to evaluating dogs and maybe don't know that. The loin is the section of the body behind the last rib and before the pelvis. It's right in here. I usually judge that, and I could probably do that pretty much blindfolded. I put my hand in there. I got nice stubby fingers, so if my hand fits snugly in between the last rib and the beginning of the pelvis, then I've got a nice short coupled dog. If it's very tight, the dog, I hope, might even be better short coupled. Sometimes they're a little bit too short in the loin. You don't want that. All right? As far as the ribs, Well sprung but not barreled, what the heck does that mean? Well, there's some cross sections. We did not slice actual dogs down the middle for this. These are just drawings. You'll notice the one in the middle is what we're looking for, okay? Again, that I judge by putting my hands on the dog. And it's very hard to quantify it. You can't say it's going to be, like 7 inches this way and 12 inches that way, whatever. If you're inexperienced and you're kind of new at this and you want to know what to do, just do this with like 100 dogs. And after a little while, you're going to know. These ribs actually are well sprung because I can feel a lot of substance and distance between them. But when I get the general shape of the rib cage, it's not circular, it's more oval. So I don't have something like this where there's not enough development in the rib cage. Sometimes we call that slab-sided. I don't have a barreled rib cage, which in some breeds is perfectly appropriate, but not in Cavaliers. I have something in between. It's not circular, it's more oval, but it's not a skinny oval. And the best way is to just put your hands on a lot of dogs and you'll get the feel for it. And if you're a judge, you know that. You already have a feel for it.
Charlie.
Oh, sorry, Barb. You can just talk, it's all right.
When, how do you personally judge depth of chest?
Oh, that's good question because it comes up next. Okay. Chest moderately deep. All right. How do I judge? And I think most people probably do it the same way. Coat can be deceptive. If there's a lot of coat, it may look like they have a good depth of chest, but maybe they don't. But hands don't lie. Boom. I go up here till I feel the rib cage, and then I come over this way, and I should be right at his elbows. And if the bottom of the chest, the bottom of the rib cage is even with the elbows, then I've got a dog with good depth of chest. Those two factors, the spring of rib and the depth of chest, are more important than just winning a dog show. It has to do with health, enough room for the internal organs, especially the heart, to function properly.
Charlie, how much, when a lot of these things that we're talking about, so for example, when you have a Cavalier that typically their chest doesn't, what we call drop, until they're a little bit older.
Right.
So when you're judging your puppies and things like that, how do you make those accommodations within the standard? Because obviously you have to judge them on the day, not what you think they're going to be. But is it more difficult in puppies? Because obviously the chest, we always try, sometimes you talk, well, he looks immature because his chest hasn't dropped yet.
Yeah.
Another spring of rib.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's like, because sometimes they're not quite there yet.
It's a puberty.
If I'm judging a puppy class, you're right. It's difficult. You have to really kind of use some judgment
Or
and
just skip that part.
yeah, or skip it. Yeah. But I have to say
that
that
in the graduate class.
for people who are evaluating their own puppies and they're not judging at a show, I go pretty much by the Pat Hastings standard that when they're at 8 weeks of age, the proportions of their body are going to be replicated again when they are adults.
I was talking to Layla Tarabad about that actually, and she said, I look at them and think, are they appropriate, say, for a 5-month-old puppy?
Right.
It's a case of, I don't want them to look like an adult if they're 5 months. I want them to look like a 5-month-old puppy. And if they're say, 18 months, yes, by then you're expecting that chest and to start to develop. So she said, with her, she just looks at what's appropriate for that age.
So
and knowing that some will
right.
mature fast. But
And that's what I'm at, because it's part of that, and then the next thing, and not to jump ahead or
it might lead to the next slide. Go ahead.
I'm not as smart as Barbara. She's clairvoyant.
I wish.
But with that kind of goes, then that kind of leads into me with the length of leg, which is the next part of it.
Let's see what's next here.
Legs. You know, because when you
Now,
talk about
we
your
gotta talk about
but
that
when you
first.
talk about like your chest, as a
Ah,
puppy,
yes.
you need enough room for it to go, so it's got to almost have appearance of a little bit more
Yep.
leg.
Yep.
And part of that also is because they don't have the coat.
Right.
It tends to make them look more leggy.
That's always a factor. As far as the part of the breed standard that says back level leading into strong muscular hindquarters, we all know, I think, how to look for a good top line, a good level top line. When we talk about leading into strong muscular hindquarters, I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, know this, but just to reiterate, the muscles that you're going to find in the hindquarters are in the loin, and this guy is solid. I mean, I feel a lot of muscle in that loin, and in the thighs. You'll feel it in the thighs. And those are the two sections that I highlighted in purple there. So after I feel the spring of rib and measure the depth of chest, I'm looking for the short coupling, for a muscular loin, muscular thighs. And now we can go right on to the legs. Oh, sorry, forgot about the slightly less body at the flank than at the last rib. Anybody here a butcher or married to a butcher or no? Okay, me neither. But if you consult with the butcher, you'll find out that the sirloin steaks come from up here, and the flank steaks come from down there. The flank is right below the loin. And when it says slightly less body at the flank than at the last rib, what we're saying is right below the loin, we should have less body, but slightly less, not a lot, than at the bottom
They're not
of the...
supposed to have a tuck-up like.
Yeah, and again, it even says that. Does it say that? Yes, no tucked up appearance. If there's not enough body in the flank, then it's going to have this kind of ugly tucked up appearance. But
We're talking about top line and, how well muscled a dog is and where those muscles are and what job they do. What is your opinion on the croup? How much dogs are...
it's actually
becoming so acceptable.
It's becoming a huge problem. But that's around the world, apparently.
I don't even think people talk about it anymore.
you're talking about a fall off at the croup.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
he has a little bit of them.
Well, I'm not
Yeah,
talking about
I mean-
this dog. I'm talking about
In general.
One
breed in general.
One thing, and I notice a lot of AKC judges do it, and I sometimes do it, if I want to assess the croup, is I'll extend the tail and I can feel it with my hand. And you can feel a little bit of a drop-off. But the other thing is when you watch the dog move, if there's a big fall-off at the croup and the tail set is not proper, which we're going to talk about in a minute, then they're going to be flying their tail anyway. So that's a kind of a telltale sign of a problem in the croup. But bump. Okay, forelegs straight, well under the dog, bone moderate, elbows close to the sides. That's a loaded sentence right there. Although, not really a sentence, there's no verb, but it's all right. This was a puppy that we were evaluating. Those are Katie's hands right there, look at that. And she was holding the puppy while I was taking pictures so I could take a good close look later on. There are a lot of problems with this puppy which, would... Not really problems, but reasons why we would not keep him to show or breed. But I have to say, I liked his forelegs. They were nice. With a little help from some illustration here, you can see the forelegs are straight. Moderate bone, we all know how to judge bone. It's just a matter of making sure there's enough there, but you can usually see it, unless there's an undue amount of coat, which you might have to put your hands on it. But you can usually see that there's sufficient bone. Doesn't have to be a lot of bone. It says moderate there. Elbows close to the side. If you look at the elbows there, you don't see them poking out. And you can also see that in the movement, which is why we usually have a down and back, so that we can see if the elbows are sticking out. That's usually fairly obvious, and it kind of messes up their front movement. That circle doesn't show up real well. There's a circle there, or an oval shape there. That kind of approximates a cross-section of his rib cage, so that you can see that those forelegs are positioned under the body. Without the aid of that, you might think they're right at the side, but Katie's hand is kind of covering up the edge of his body, and it actually extends out to there.
Can I say that's why it's so important to see a dog when it moves? Because you can stack a dog wide. He's not that wide in the front, but he looks it, and you also can stack them really close together.
Yeah, right.
But when they move, they can't stack them a certain way.
You watch them come at you, it only takes about 4 or 5 steps, and you say, that's good, or I don't like it that much. No, it's a good point. Thank you, Flynn. All right, well, we were talking about spring of rib and coupling and muscles, and continuing with the examination from the ribs to the loin, we get, and then the muscles in the thigh. While your hands are there, this is again something I do by feel, not by sight. I just come around the stifles here, which is the knees, and if I get anything from up here to down here that approximates something close to a quarter of a circle, then I know that I'm dealing with a dog that has very good turn of stifle. And then that's where we find it there. If a dog does not have good turn of stifle, your hands are not going to turn at all. They're going to be quite straight. And
You can tell if you pull their back leg out. Like if it looks more like that.
yeah, right. Yeah, this would be not much turn of stifle. But of course, this is measured when the dog's pasterns, the rear pasterns, are vertical. So that's why you're going to see an awful lot of judges, most of us do it, make that little adjustment. If you are an exhibitor and not a judge, and you wonder, oh, I must have made a mistake because the judge changed the position of the dog's leg. No, we're just trying to make a fair assessment. So we put those rear pasterns in the right position so we can judge the turn of stifle.
Charlie, quick point on the pasterns, and I don't mean to cut you off, but quick point of keep your dog's nails short. Keep them short, keep them short, keep them short. Because we see so many loose, I see a lot of loose pasterns, and it's because
Yeah. When you've got nails that are long, it tips your back.
and you really, so it's something, and as Cavalier people, we kind of don't always do it because it's not their preference, and they've got slippers, and
It's not their preference.
it's not their preference.
And that's a very good point, Laura. And another thing that what I like to do, I don't see a lot of judges doing it, but I usually give a little wiggle right here at the hock to see if, and you can feel if it's like blah, 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 or nice and solid, there's a big difference. Oh, I'll repeat it. But not him. There's just an example. As far as the hocks well let down, I think we all know the general rule of thumb. The hock, by the way, some people think that the pastern is the hock. The hock is not this. The hock is the joint here, and that hock height ideally should be about 1/3 of the total height of the dog. Okay, so this picture, that's another dog I don't know, but nice hock height is almost exactly what you have.
One of the things, because it is a big part of the Wolfhound standard, talks about well let down hocks, and some people think it just means short hocks, and it doesn't.
Right.
It means that angle at the hock, because if you don't have that lovely angle at the back of the hock there, the leg can't, hang on, borrow you nice. It can't flex, it can't bend that way, then go that way. If there's almost no angle there, then, because everybody usually sees that, but they don't necessarily, because of the feathering, don't see that. And that's also important.
Yep, absolutely.
To help give them that movement for the drive.
And as far as that last part, the hind legs viewed from the rear should parallel each other from hock to heel. I think we all realize that when a dog gets moving, they tend to converge a little bit, both front and rear. It's a natural occurrence. You get that convergence. This girl, who did quite well during her career, you can see if you take a look at the upper rear leg, you can see that it's converging. But if you just look at this pastern from the hock to the toe, to the heel actually, they should be as close as possible to parallel. And that's what we're looking at. And again, when we have the dog moving away from us, that's what we're looking at. Now the croup comes in. The tail has to be, see, the breed standard doesn't really talk about a fall off at the croup. It talks about the tail set so that it can be carried level with the back. The word carried in there to me is a very important one because it's when the dog is moving that we're judging that. When a dog is he's wagging his tail, but he's just standing, he's not moving. And you'll notice his tail is way off from level with the back. But I'm going to assume that if you moved him, it's going to come out quite a bit better. And that's what we look for. So that is the type of image we're looking at, is for that tail to be carried straight out as an extension of the top line. Slight variations are not a problem. If the dog has the tail tucked way underneath, to me it usually indicates that the dog is not comfortable, maybe a little bit fearful of the environment, and that might be a problem as far as temperament is concerned. And again, if it's not set properly, a lot of times you're going to find that it's going to be a gay tail, a tail that's sticking straight up.
Shouldn't be a beagle.
Right, exactly. That's it. So, and did we all know that docking is I've never seen a dock tail.
It has to be 3/4.
Yeah.
They do it a lot more in the English toys.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's always been acceptable, but it's only 3/4.
I just find it amazing that they talk about docking because I honestly myself, I've never seen a Cavalier with a dock tail. Pam, you have? Okay. Well, I bow to your experience because you have more than I do. So that's
To tell them about.
Oh, and I have, yes, we have a puppy. If you look at my little boy who's in junior puppy dog, he docked his own tail when he was a little younger. Well, only by about that much, but he got scared and he jumped and he got his tail caught in some metal thing, and then I was feeling his tail to see if he was all right because he was kind of crying, and this little tiny chunk came off in my hand. I said, "Oh well," but he's all right. He's fine. Oh, blood all over the place. Oh, yes, because then they wag their tail and the blood sprays all over the place, on the walls, all over.
Well, the good tailors can be docked. It's like within the first 3 days of life. It's a good that we don't have a very happy breed.
Yeah, he was. How old was he then? About maybe 6 weeks? No, more. Probably about 10 weeks, 12 weeks, maybe, something like that. Yeah.
All I know is the blood was all over.
Blood all over the place. Our last pretest is pretest number 7. In our breed standard, which of these is not mentioned? Red ears on a Blenheim, a white blaze on a tricolor, rich red on a ruby, tan markings under the tail on a black and tan. Only one of them. So we know the answer, but I'll bet that we didn't know that among those 4 things, the presence of a blaze on a tricolor is not mentioned in our breed standard. The AKC standard does mention a white blaze, but it does say between the eyes. This girl has a white blaze between her eyes. It's kind of narrow, but it's there, and it doesn't extend up any farther than between the eyes, but it would seem to meet the breed standard, which is kind of interesting. But red ears on a Blenheim, rich red on a ruby, tan markings under the tail on a black and tan, those are all mentioned.
And a tricolor.
Well, yeah, we're going to talk about that as soon as I can. But let's do question 2 because the answer is not there. In our breed standard, it calls for feathering in all of those except the chest, the feet, the legs, or the tail. So, last chance to use our cards here. Which one do we think is not mentioned? I see A's and C's, more A's, and A is correct. It does call for feathering on the feet, the legs, and the tail, not on the chest. We like to see a nice bib and feathering down here, but...
Chest mullet, as my husband called it. Yes, he calls us his chest mullet.
okay.
A chest mullet.
Oh. I will always think of that now.
That's right in your mind.
But it's not mentioned in the breed standard. That's kind of interesting. So let's take a look at all of this. I think that's a very nice coat there. It's not excessive. It is long, silky. I can vouch for the fact that it's soft to the touch. That's actually me holding the ribbon that I gave this guy. Free from curl, although a slight wave is permissible. And the feathering is called for on the ears, legs, and tail. It should be long. Feathering on the feet, the slippers, is a feature of the breed. I have this, one of my favorite memories, well, not favorite, but one of my most interesting memories is years ago we brought, before we were doing a lot of our own grooming, we brought this girl to a groomer before a dog show. Trim the slippers. So we went to the dog show. Liz Spaulding was judging. And this was a nice girl. She did very, very well. But I think, where did Liz put her? Last place? What did she? I think she was like 4th out of 4 or something like that. And then she called me over when we were done. She said, you know, this girl is really nice, and I would have given her the class, but I just can't do it with those feathers trimmed. So on the slippers. So it's an important thing. It's a feature of the breed. So, you know.
And the groomer that did that had Cavaliers.
Yes, I couldn't believe it. We haven't spoken to her in years.
I was ringside
Clearly
with a judge one
conspiracy.
time in AKC going in for an handler group. He said, I don't know how you guys do it with those Grinch feet. And I was like, well, I mean, he's trimmed off now, but I was like, well, I handler really gave him my placement in the group. I'm like, you're supposed to have them.
Yeah, I know. Well, I've had comments like that from judges myself. I know what you mean.
I've had cuts from other exhibitors too. Can't I just trim it? No! But
Yeah.
just no!
Now, as far as trimming is concerned, our breed standard is not quite as stringent as the AKC standard, which states that it's actually grounds for dismissal from the ring if they are trimmed, if it's obvious. But no trimming is permitted. Obviously, the hair between the pads on the underside is okay. And you know, Jeff, I think you mentioned something about measuring. We don't measure the height or the weight, but we all know those numbers. And again, it's very loose. It says these are ideal heights and weights. Slight variations are permissible.
The English standard doesn't have a height. The English standard.
Right, yes, right.
It's 12 to 18 pounds, the English
Yeah.
standard.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there are differences. And if you look at the history of the breed standard, it has changed actually over the years. The last thing I want to talk about is the colors. Again, if you look at the Blenheim color is described as, of course, his ears must be red, a wide white blaze between the eyes, between the ears, sorry. So we expect that there's going to be a blaze that is going to be wide between the ears, all right, and a Blenheim. It doesn't say anything like that under tricolor. Doesn't mention blaze at all. The Blenheim spot we like to see. Yes, I saw. Clearly says that it's highly desirable, but not essential. So, personally, when I'm judging, it's a nice touch if I see it, but I'm not going to let that in any way be the deciding factor unless I got identical twins in front of me except for the Blenheim spot. That would be about it. As far as ruby is concerned, you know, that's pretty simple. It's all one color and it's a nice rich red. and Susan, you were the one who brought up the tan, right? The tan markings, there is a slight difference between what it says about tan markings on the tricolor and the black and tan. Black and tan should have the tan eyebrows, markings on the cheeks, inside the ears. I've been at AKC shows where they lift up the ear and they look to make sure that it's tan.
You sure they know how to draw full colors?
Yeah, I know.
I've seen
Amazing.
judges look under tricolours to make sure they had tan on under their tail.
Yeah, right. Yeah, under the tail too. But if you notice that the black and tan, of course, has the legs, it does require tan, but on the tricolor we don't see it on the legs, because usually in the tricolor the black is just going to go right to white legs. So those are 4 examples of the colors that I like. And I think those were all the points that I wanted to bring out about the colors. And that is the end of the breed standard.
False. You didn't mention false.
You
didn't mention false.
False.
Oh, well, see, we don't like to do fault judging, and this is, if you're not a judge, it's hard to understand. However, it does say white marks on whole colors would be considered a fault. Heavy ticking on blenheims or tricolors. Now, I find it interesting that it says heavy ticking, because I've got tricolors and blenheims that have little freckles on them.
It used to be really heavy ticking.
Yeah, they're talking about more like what the
On a pointer.
Yeah.
You know, it used to be.
some of them
Plus,
always.
remember they used to weigh and wicket at the National?
Remember,
I mean, it wasn't a requirement, it was
Right.
voluntary.
Yeah.
But they would weigh and wicket them at the National.
I think Winston.
Oh yes, our very first Cavalier, like 43 years ago, something like that. He was a rescue. We had no idea where he came from. We didn't even know what breed he was when we got him. Very nice dog, but totally unshowable. I mean, he was like freckles all over his muzzle. He was a great pet, and he got us interested in the breed, so, that was it.
His fault.
So, that brings us to the end. And one thing, if you are a judge and you would like a certificate of completion, there's my email address. Very easy to remember. It's my name @gmail.com. And that's our website if you lose my email address.
Photograph?
I still have mine.
Do we have an autographed photo that comes with it?
Of me, you mean? Well, you should, yes. Susan's referring to my YouTube channel, which I get recognized at dog shows fairly often. People coming up to me saying, "Oh, I watch your YouTube channel all the time." Feel free to email me if you want a certificate. If you would like a copy of this slideshow, I have a PDF version that I can email to you easily. If you'd like that for your records, for reference, whatever, I'll be very happy to email that to you too. All right?